My name is William Chen, and this is Eric Jaworski. Today, we'd like to tell you a little about the history of the Chinese and the United States.
Our parents came from China and had to work hard, like many other American immigrants. They came to the U.S. poor, but through hard work and perseverance, they persisted to give us a better life. We'd like to dedicate this production in honor of their many sacrifices.
Of course, our parents, like many Chinese Americans who came before them, faced many barriers to attaining a better life in the United States. This included everything from legalized nativism to plain racism. Ultimately, many Chinese Americans took a stand against these nativist policies and opinions in the United States through various legal means to improve life for both themselves and other members of their ethnic group.
Will Chen, the history friend.
Will Chen, the history friend.
Will Chen, the history friend.
Ancient times.
Will Chen, the history friend.
Jamestown was founded in 1607.
Will Chen, the history friend.
2 months, 44 presidents.
Will Chen, the history friend.
Brought to you by
Fact and Asian Experience Club.
In the mid to late 18th century and the early 20th century, many Chinese left Qing China for a multitude of reasons ranging from poverty to violent conflict.
Most Chinese originally came over to California to partake in the gold rush of 1849. The Chinese often mined areas that had already been passed over to avoid competition with other miners.
When the Chinese came over, they were often uneducated and willing to work for very little. Many Chinese were hired as cheap labor by the Central Pacific Railroad Company, the western half of the famous Transcontinental Railroad. They defied their foremen's expectations and earned reputations as hard-working, reliable workers. Nitroglycerin was used to excavate railway tunnels. The handling of this highly dangerous substance was entrusted to the Chinese, who were expendable. Consequently, many Chinese died while working on the railroad.
Other occupations Chinese Americans were involved in were agriculture, fishing, and the service sector, especially laundry.
Many Americans were afraid that the large amounts of Chinese immigrants would dilute the American culture and take American jobs. Consequently, there was a surge of anti-Chinese sentiment in the U.S., particularly on the West Coast. Whites used ideas of racial superiority to justify their discrimination of Chinese Americans. Most prominently, they referred to the Chinese as a savage yellow peril. This political cartoon portrays the way many American nativists felt towards the immigrant Chinese. They felt that the Chinese immigrants would kill the American way of life. The largest mass lynching in American history occurred in LA's Chinatown, reputedly started by the death of a white man in the crossfire of a Chinese gang battle. 18 Chinese immigrants were lynched and many Chinese-owned properties were looted. The perpetrators were never brought to justice.
Eventually, all of the nativist sentiment culminated in the infamous Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which prohibited almost all Chinese immigration. Grover Cleveland proclaimed the Chinese to be
an element ignorant of our Constitution and laws, impossible of assimilation with our people and dangerous to our peace and welfare. What do you know about the Chinese Exclusion Act?
I know that it was put in place in the 19th century to, I guess, simply to not accept Chinese immigrants. I know that China's a really big country, and that's everything I know about China.
Oh, hi there. The courts were a tool that many Chinese Americans used to combat the legal nativism against them. One particularly prominent court case was that of the United States versus Wong Kim Ark.
Here's a story of a Chinese fella who fought for U.S. citizenship rights. He was born on U.S. soil but denied entry when coming home that night. Here's a story of the Supreme Court and the case that wouldn't let the Chinese come. Chief Justice Melville Fuller and his others would affect the outcome. So when Wong Kim Ark was told to go return back, he fought for his 14th Amendment rights. It established precedents interpretation. That's why those born here don't have to fight. Won't you, Mark? He fought for rights. That's why those born here don't have to fight.
Will?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. So, besides Wong Kim Ark versus the United States, there are also many other Supreme Court cases involving Chinese Americans over the 19th and 20th centuries.
For example, in Yik Wo v. Hopkins, the court invalidated a California law that prevented many Chinese wanderers from working. Using the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, the court ruled that laws that were race neutral could not be enforced in a prejudicial manner.
Wong Wing was an illegal immigrant who was sentenced to hard labor and then a deportation. Wong was denied a writ of habeas corpus. He then appealed to the Supreme Court. The court ruled that this violated the 5th and 6th Amendment and that he could not be sentenced to hard labor without a trial by jury.
However, legal litigation did not always go so well for the Chinese.
Fang Yuting was a Chinese citizen residing in the U.S. He challenged Section 6 of the Geary Act, which amended the Chinese Exclusion Act. The amendment required the Chinese Americans to obtain certificates of residency and allowed for deportation if they failed to obtain these certificates. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the U.S. government and upheld the Geary Act.
Chinese immigrants still entered the country, but in smaller numbers, often using fraudulent papers to pose as merchants.
It was not until the Second World War when the issue of Chinese immigration was raised again. At the time, the United States was allied with China against Japan. A movement began to repeal the Exclusion Act as a sign of increased Sino-American friendship. Eventually, this resulted in the Magnuson Act of 1943, which repealed the Exclusion Act, but still only allowed Chinese immigration in limited numbers.
However, the Magnuson Act allowed the continuation of the ban against ownership of property and businesses by the Chinese.
Did you know that?
After the Great San Francisco earthquake of 1906, many Chinese Americans would become paper sons. They would declare themselves as U.S. citizens whose documents were lost in the fire after the earthquake.
Now you know!
Consider the following.
The Chinese could be seen as not taking a stand against discrimination because the U.S. only repealed the Chinese Exclusion Act when they wanted China to be an ally in World War II. Also, many Chinese tried to get around the Exclusion Act instead of actually trying to get rid of it.
Chinese did take a direct stand against discrimination by engaging in extensive legal litigation against both the Chinese Exclusion Act and many other nativist laws. They also played a key part in the movement to repeal the Chinese Exclusion Act. The Chinese also formed associations to help new immigrants with legal and other issues. For example, the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association provided Wong Kim Ark with legal representation in his case.
Will?
This show the Chinese discriminate from overseas. This one for the reasons, the feelings, them and the hate. Oppression, aggression, fighting back when they could. The Exclusion Act and massacre, then I heard them for good. Resisted, oh yes. Use fraud papers and finesse. Resisted, oh yes. To help fix the discrimination mess. Resisted, yes sir. By lobbying, I concur. Resisted, yes sir. Even though they were amateurs. Chinese against the nativists. Through legal means and lobbying. Magnuson Act helped them. Cause the injustice was defeated. Cause the injustice was defeated. Cause the injustice was defeated. 1800s quickly saw. Don't believe me, rewind. Don't believe me, rewind. Don't believe me, rewind.
Well, that's our show, guys. Thanks for watching. Now, if you excuse me, I think I'll go join this protest.
Yeah. Where's Will? He's all the way back there. Will's running.